Hey everybody, welcome to the video. It's Friday, May 28th, and I'm breaking down this 12-game main slate that we have over on DraftKings today. And one big thing to keep in mind is that we have a ton of weather forecasted, so there's a handful of games that could end up getting washed out. Now, it's very early in the morning when I'm recording this, so I don't want to put too much emphasis on weather and not even mention games that could potentially get rained out, because I think we all know that the weather can change at a moment's notice. So just keep in mind when I'm talking about some of these guys, they are in games that could be impacted by weather, but I'm not in the business of trying to figure out what game's going to get rained out very early in the morning, so we'll just have to keep monitoring that throughout the day, and hopefully we can get as many games in as possible, because when games start getting rained out, it's very unfortunate, because sometimes it's in some games that we really want to roster some guys from. So just cross your fingers and toes there that games can stay pretty clean for the most part, but we will probably have several washouts today, unfortunately, because there's a lot of rain today in the United States. But anyway, if you guys find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. And if you guys want to follow me over on social media, in order to find me in the bottom right corner of your screen, my handles are there. And if you want to support the channel over on Patreon, link is down below for that, for the projections, optimizer, ownership projections, rankings, cheat sheets, data sheets, Discord community, all that fun stuff. Link is down below. But I think that's it for the plug. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as per usual, we're going to start with the pitchers and move on to the bats. And there's really not that many pitchers I like today. It's a huge slate, but I would like the bats more than I like the pitchers today, because there's a lot of pretty mediocre pitching for the most part. But these are three guys I do like quite a bit. Now, I do believe Ian Anderson's in one of those games. It looks like it's probably not going to look too promising on the radar as of right now. I'm hoping that changes throughout the day, because I really like the spot here versus the Mets. But let's start up top with the ace of this slate, Garrett Cole, $11,200. And I'm having a hard time seeing not wanting to play Garrett Cole here. Only a 2.8 implied team total against him. Very heavy favorite, 9K prop as well. And we always like rostering pitchers versus Detroit. Lefties, righties, doesn't really matter. So far this season, you preferred lefties, but they're not very good versus righties either. And Garrett Cole is one of the best pitchers in baseball. He's in that upper echelon tier with guys like Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, Shane Bieber. He is right up there with them, and he has been absolutely fantastic for several seasons now. And looking at his numbers specifically this year, they're fantastic. ERA below 2, xFIP at 2.2, SIERA at 2.1, very close to a 40% K rate, only a 3.3% walk rate, which is very elite numbers. Now, the fly ball rate's above 40%, but I'm not really overly concerned about that. The Detroit Tigers don't have much power in their lineup, and looking at their splits this season versus righties, over a 27% K rate, 150 ISO, 300 on base percentage, and 91 WRC plus. Yeah, I would be kind of surprised if Garrett Cole doesn't get double-digit Ks here, so do like him quite a bit. Plus, you never have to worry about pitch count with him. We can always work deep into games, so do like Garrett Cole quite a bit. I realize he is expensive, but I think if you're playing cash games today, I'd really have a hard time getting away from Garrett Cole. Now, in tournaments, if I was going to say the Falcons, the Braves game and the Mets game happen, the Braves and Mets game, I should say, doesn't get rained out. It's a really good spot here versus the Mets, because we know how bad their lineup is right now. I mean, they're missing so many good players, and really the only good player they have right now is Francisco Lindor, and he's been awful this year. So even then, it's just really, who are you scared of in this lineup? We know Ian Anderson's a very solid pitcher. Now, trust me, if I can only spend up for one pitcher today, it's going to be Garrett Cole. I can't even make I can't really make a strong case for him to play Ian Anderson over Garrett Cole unless you're just factoring the price tag. But as long as price doesn't matter, which it shouldn't at SP1 today, because I think you can just make Garrett Cole work pretty easy. This is a great spot for Anderson. Now, is he as good as Garrett Cole? Obviously not, but he's got a 25% K rate. He's walking 10% of the batters he's faced this year, which isn't great, but overall some very respectable numbers. I know some of them are popping up red here, but when you're comparing numbers to Garrett Cole, they're going to obviously not show up quite as well. But Ian Anderson's a fine player. He's just a little bit expensive, but love the matchup here versus the Mets. They've been terrible recently, especially with how many good bats they have out of the lineup. Like No Conforto, Alonso, Nimmo, and just the list goes on. It's a very bad lineup. Only 3.17 implied team total against them. Pretty heavy favorite, 6K prop. And the numbers overall this season are pretty solid, so I don't hate Ian Anderson as long as weather cooperates, but it doesn't look super promising right now. And if you're looking for an SP2, we have Shohei Ohtani, $7,800. I talked about him yesterday because he was supposed to pitch yesterday, but I guess he got stuck in traffic. I don't think I've ever heard that one before, but I guess Shohei Ohtani got stuck in traffic and could not make his scheduled start. Now, he ended up playing in the game, but I just couldn't get there early enough, I guess, to warm up and stuff. That's the news report I read. I didn't look too deep into it. I just kind of laughed at the headline, but that's kind of funny. Not for Ohtani, obviously. I'm sure he felt terrible, but I liked him yesterday versus Oakland, and obviously he didn't pitch, so now that he has an extra day of rest, I guess I like him maybe even slightly more here Only a 4 implied team total against him. It's a pitcher's park in Oakland, and yeah, I mean, the Athletics do have a decent lineup. I mean, they got some solid bats there, but I don't think Ohtani's going to struggle too much. Now, the only thing I say about Ohtani every single time is that walk rate can give you some high blood pressure because it is very stressful when you roster a pitcher that just keeps walking guys, which is what he's done this season. Now, I think early in the year it was closer to like 30%. It's now down to 17%, which is fine. If we can get that closer to 10%, I'd feel a little bit better, even if that strikeout rate drops a little bit. But right now, he's got a 35% K, which is very, very good. It's just that the walks are definitely a bit of an issue, and he doesn't typically work too deep into games around 80 pitches per game, but if he can strike out, if he keeps that strikeout rate close to 35%, I think that's fine. He's not really allowing any fly balls, over a 50% ground ball rate, not really getting hit too hard, less than a homer per 9, so I think Ohtani should be fine here, and if you're looking for some nice strikeout upside below $8,000, I think Ohtani is your guy, and plus if that Ian Anderson game gets rained out, and you can't like double spend it for a pitcher day, there is like no other really good SP2s, so I think Ohtani would end up being very, very popular. Just my assumption as of right now, but I could see the slate going that way. But I do like Ohtani here quite a bit. And that's it for the pitchers. Just a few guys I wanted to talk about. Don't think it's a very strong pitching slate, so we'll move on to the bats. And when it's not a strong pitching slate, that usually means it's a strong bat slate, and I think that is certainly the case today. And we'll start up top with the catcher position. Remember the diamond hit the outfield as well. And keep in mind, guys, a lot of these games could, maybe not a lot, but a nice handful of games could end up getting rained out today. I know where I am, it's kind of cold and rainy, and I think that's like what it's mostly in the Northeast today in the Midwest, I think, for the most part. Anyway, we'll start top with a pair of White Sox catchers here, Yermin Mercedes and Yasmani Grandal. If price doesn't matter, I'd like to get Mercedes, but when you factor in the price tag, I think Grandal might end up being the better play. I think he batted second yesterday. Tim Anderson was not in the lineup, though, so that kind of skewed some things. We had Nick Madrigal leading up. I don't think that'll be the case today unless Tim Anderson happened to miss once again. But I like both these guys quite a bit. But I do prefer the lefties versus Matt Harvey. And since Yasmani Grandal is a switch hitter, he should get that platoon advantage here versus Matt Harvey. I know his numbers haven't been as great this year, but over a 200 ISO, he's walking nearly 30% of the time, which is kind of insane, to be honest. I mean, Yermin Mercedes has been fantastic, but he's only walking 7% of the time. Yasmani Grandal is at 28.9%, absolutely insane, and only a 5% soft contact rate, as well with a 42% hard contact rate. So I like both these guys quite a bit. If there was a lefty in the mound, I'd probably prefer Mercedes, but since there's a righty in the mound, I prefer lefties versus Matt Harvey. I will side with Yasmani Grandal here, but it is very close, but you can save a couple of bucks as well. And they have a team total of 5 here. And Matt Harvey, at the beginning of the season, wasn't bad. It looked like he was kind of making a bit of a resurgence, but the past 3 games have been pretty poor for him. Especially, I think his last start was the one versus the Rays where he got actually hammered for like 7 runs in 2 innings. I'm not even sure if he finished the second inning, but yeah, you can definitely target all the White Sox here versus Matt Harvey. And the weather didn't look terrible here. There's still going to be some weather concerns, but it looks like this one might not be the worst of the bunch. So hopefully that is good to go. And if that's the case, I could see the White Sox being very popular versus a pitcher everyone likes to pick against. And then Mitch Garver, $4,300, just facing a lefty here. And he's been playing he's been playing baseball recently, of course. He's been playing solid baseball recently, and he's only $4,300. Typically, I feel like he's a bit more expensive than that. And the Twins are looking like they're going to be in a good spot here versus lefty on the mound, Chris Bubich, who is an okay pitcher. He's not terrible, but I do prefer the power righties on the Twins here. So guys like Mitch Garver, Miguel Sano, Nelson Cruz, Jorge Polanco, I think they all make for some pretty solid plays there. I forget if I even mentioned Josh Donaldson, but we're going to talk about him in a little bit. So I do think the righties on the Twins grade out pretty well today. And Mitch Garver hasn't hit for a high average this season, only batting 204. We just have a 255 ISO. Then dropping at first base, Jose Abreu, $5,200. If you guys watched yesterday's game, he took Bruce Zimmerman deep, but I don't know how that ball did not get out of the yard. I was watching the game. I was already celebrating their home run. When he hit it, it looked like it was gone. I think it might have been over the yellow, but the guy just put his glove up, caught it. It wasn't like a spectacular catch or anything. It was so close to being gone. It was very unfortunate that it was not, because I could have used that because I was like right here in the cash line. Sucks. I know he was chalky, but it would have held. But I do like Abreu here. I prefer him versus lefties, but you can stack any White Sox here versus Matt Harvey. I have no issues with that. Plus, the Orioles bullpen's not the greatest thing in the world. Then Paul Goldschmidt, $3,900. I know Madison Bumgarner has been much improved this year. I mean, if we're talking like last season where Bumgarner was an absolute trash can versus right-handed bats, I would be super confident all of these Cardinals bats today: Dylan Carlson, Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, Tommy Edman. All these guys would be fantastic plays. Madison Bumgarner has definitely been improved this season. If you guys want to look at his splits versus righties this year, it's definitely got a lot better. He's actually been a bit better versus the righties than he has versus the lefties, because right now he's got a 23% K rate. The righties only walking them 4% of the time, 231 batting average given up, and a 183 ISO. Still a high fly ball rate and high hard contact, so I feel like at some point the power is going to start being given up, which even then it's getting close to 200. But I do like the righties here for the Cardinals. They're not my favorite stack in the slate, but it is a nice park upgrade going to Arizona, I would say. And at some point that bad Madison Bumgarner is going to come out. He's been playing good baseball recently, but I don't think it's going to continue all season long. Although I don't think he's going to be as bad as he was in the past. And then Denny Santana, $2,800. I think the Red Sox are a decent stack today versus Cody Petit. I know he had a really good start last time out, but it was a much softer matchup, and this time he's facing one of the teams that's been playing one of the best, or they have one of the best offenses so far this season. Team total above 5. He's pitching in Fenway, so I do think the Red Sox do make for a decent stack today. And then Kike Hernandez, $3,900 for reasons I just mentioned with Santana. I prefer Kike versus left-handed pitching, but you can definitely play him versus righties as well. He's hit both fine so far this season. Then Josh Rojas, $3,600 versus Oviedo, I believe that's how you say his last name. But they're a decent stack today. I don't think they're one of the best out there, but you can definitely stack against Oviedo if you want. I think the Diamondbacks make for a decent, maybe a contrarian stack today. I know they were popular last night, but it's just because we had limited options. But I think Rojas is fine. He's batting close to 300 this season. Should be leading off 200 ISO. His numbers aren't terrible. So as long as he's leading off $3,600, I think he's in for a decent play. Then Ty France, $2,800. I think you can stack Seattle today, although I really have a hard time recommending stacking Seattle. But Jordan Lyles is the guy that I usually stack against. If you guys watch some previous videos from me, I said I think Jordan Lyles might be the pitcher I've stacked against the most so far this season, and I'd have to look at the numbers to back that up. But I've definitely used a lot of bats versus Jordan Lyles this year. I just don't think he's a very good pitcher, and I know Seattle's lineup is terrible. They get no hit almost every single week, which they haven't got no hit yet this week, so I guess they're due pretty soon here. But Lyles is just not a very good pitcher. If you're looking at his numbers, close to a 6 ERA, 5 xFIP, over 4.5 Sierra, less than a 20% K rate, close to double-digit walk rate with a 200 ISO given up, 41% fly ball rate, and some hard contact as well. So if you want to use a couple Mariners, I don't hate it. Mitch Haniger, Ty France, Kyle Seager, I think those guys are viable. You could use Kyle Lewis as well. They go into third base. We have Yoel Moncada, $5,200. Prefer him versus right-handed pitching, and we have one of the worst righties in the league right now, Matt Harvey here. And I think Moncada is a fine play if you are stacking the White Sox. Wish he was a little bit cheaper, but if you are stacking them up, hard to leave off the guy hitting near the top of the order. Rafael Devers, $4,600, a really cheap price point for Devers here. He's facing a righty, so yeah, I'd be all about Rafael Devers here, especially if you're stacking the Red Sox. Should be plenty of RBI opportunities here. And if you're looking at his splits versus right-handed pitching this season, that is versus lefties versus righties, he is batting about 300, 431 WOBA, over a 400 ISO, 176 WRC plus, and over a 700 slugging. So yeah, do like Rafael Devers here quite a bit, like pretty much all the Red Sox for the most part, even the guys I do not have listed on here. And then Josh Donaldson, $4,000, a little bit cheap here. We know he's got some good pop versus left-handed pitching, so I do like him, especially if you are stacking the Twins. Dropping on the shortstop, we have Tim Anderson, $5,100. He was not in the lineup yesterday. If he's back today, he should be leading off for the White Sox, which are one of the best, if not the best stack on the entire slate, especially when you factor in weather. So I do like Tim Anderson quite a bit. And I say that, I know there's some weather concerns here, but it sounds like they should be good to go as of right now, but we'll have to see. But Tim Anderson, doing typical Tim Anderson things this year, batting close to 300. Hasn't really shown a ton of power this season, but we know it's there if he needs it. I don't mind Tim Anderson. Then we have a couple of cheap options here in JP Crawford, which I think is part of that decent Seattle stack versus Jordan Lyles. I'm not really advocating for a Seattle stack, but I do think these guys are viable. Then Edmundo Sosa, is a small sample size so far this season, around 30, 40 plate appearances, but he's been playing very well so far with those limited plate appearances, close to a 400 batting average, over a 430 WOBA, not a ton of power, but 177 WRC plus and a 500 on base percentage. I know that's not going to keep up, but he gets a nice righty on lefty matchup here versus Bumgarner, so I don't hate the idea of using Sosa. JD Martinez, $5,800, dropping down to the outfield. Would I prefer if it was a lefty? Sure, but he's been crushing right-handed pitching so far this season, so I like all the Red Sox, so obviously like JD. And the expensive outfielders don't look that great today, so JD Martinez and Nelson Cruz were like the only guys that I could find that really stood out to me. And speaking of Cruz, he's facing a lefty. Anytime Cruz is facing a lefty, he's going to be playable just because of how good he is versus left-handed pitching. Same goes for JD Martinez, even though he is facing a righty. Mitch Haniger, $4,900. Again, part of that Seattle stack that it's never going to look great on paper because it's Seattle, but I wouldn't hate the idea of stacking against Jordan Lyles here, maybe as a contrarian stack. Late night hammer, their game starts at 10, so I can't imagine they're going to be too popular. And Adam Eaton, $4,700, just a lefty on righty matchup here versus Matt Harvey. He doesn't have a ton of power on his bat, but If you are stacking the White Sox, he's going to hit near the top of the order. If you just want to do like the full 1 through 4, 1 through 5 stack, I get wanting to play Adam Eaton. Although he just feels like a bit too expensive for me for a guy that doesn't have much home run upside. Ketel Marte, $4,400. He's been playing great this year in a limited sample size because I realized he was hurt for a while, but close to 40 plate appearances, batting close to 380 with a 461 WOBA, 300 ISO, 191 WRC plus, and over 8,000 OPS. Switch hitters always got the platoon advantage as well. And the Diamondback stack, while I don't think it's the best out there today, I do think it's certainly viable and one of the better ones. And then David Peralta, $4,000, kind of the same play as Ketel Marte. Obviously not quite as good as numbers this season, but he has been playing well with close to a 275 batting average and close to a 200 ISO, and he hits in a prime spot in the order as well. And then to round out the cheap outfitters, we have Alex Verdugo, $3,600. There's that nice lefty-on-righty matchup here versus Petit, and I do like the Red Sox stack quite a bit. And Verdugo is always really cheap, so he's just one of those guys that have been playing a lot this season because he's obviously a solid bat. Hits in a prime spot in the order, batting close to 300 this season. I just really like the price point most days for Alex Verdugo, and this is a really cheap one at $3,600. Tommy Pham, $3,500. He's been on fire recently. I know the numbers overall this season aren't good, but for about a week now, Tommy Pham has been playing some really good baseball. He gets a nice righty-on-lefty matchup here versus Framber Valdez. I know the Padres stack doesn't look super enticing today, but $3,500 for a guy that's been hitting very, very well. Don't hate the idea of using Pham. I'm not sure I'd get there in cash games, but if you just want to look for a contrarian one-off, I'm not even sure if he'd be super contrarian, but just as a one-off, I think Tommy Pham is a solid option. Kyle Garlick, if you're stacking the Twins, he should be leading off versus lefty, and the only good numbers he has this season are versus left-handed pitching. Looking at his splits this season, 525 slugging versus them, 351 WOBA, 225 ISO, and a 318 batting average. So I guess I wouldn't hate using Kyle Garlick here. He's never an exciting play, but he's a play nonetheless. Then Andrew Vaughn, $2,500. He's also eligible at first base, but I like all of the White Sox here. I prefer if it was a lefty on the mound, but I think you can stack any single White Sox bat here. I think I talked about all of them, maybe besides a couple guys like Madrigal and Mendick. Trying to think if I'm forgetting anybody else, but I might be missing somebody, but I pretty much like every single White Sox bat today. But with that being said, guys, I think that's going to be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. Follow me over at social media if you want. And I think that's pretty much it. So I will stop rambling, and I'll see you guys in the next video.